Welcome back to Thinking Caps, the podcast that gets marketers thinking. Today we are bringing in a chief data scientist, but not only a chief data scientist, but the. In 2019, DataIQ listed the 100 most influential people in a data-driven business, and Orlando Machado was at the top, the numero uno guy. So what are we going to talk about? We'll talk about his role as the chief data scientist at Aviva, a multinational insurance company serving tens of millions of customers. We'll talk a little bit about machine learning and AI. Is AI what you actually think it is? We'll define it a little better. We'll talk about segmentation and personalization at scale. Everything from small survey groups up to behavioral and observing. Really why observing your consumer's behavior across multi-touch points is super crucial to prediction. And then we'll close out with things like privacy and actually how do you be a disruptor inside of your company? How do you effectuate change? How do you get your teams to work together to take a data-driven approach? So let's get into it. This is going to be a great episode. Right now, it is Thinking Caps.
Excellent. Well, Orlando, I wanted to dive in with a question that I think reflects some of the changes that we're seeing in businesses around us. Obviously, we're still in the midst of COVID-19, and it's been very interesting having different CXOs come in and talk about what it actually means for their particular area. And actually, one of the last interviews we had was the chief the chief digital officer of StarHub, and that was interesting because being chief digital officer right now, it's the hot seats of hot seats. There's so much digital acceleration because of all the business moving online with all the lockdowns and stuff around the world. So my question is what's it like being a chief data officer in the current situation, COVID-19? What kind of changes and impacts has had that to your role?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think, as always, the application of data and data science is huge. It can impact every part of our business. I think one of the first challenges for us was actually using data to understand the impact of the COVID-19 effect on our business for this year. We're a big insurance business. We have people not traveling, we have people not driving, but we also have people with healthcare conditions. So we need to understand the mix of that. So there's a huge data science challenge around that. I think also logistically, I think if you run a very technical team, you suddenly need to get everybody working from home and you need to make sure that you have bandwidth. So I think, but for a short time early in the lockdown, we were pretty consumed with operational issues around how we made sure that people could be set up to analyze huge volumes of data from the comfort of their living room or their bedroom. And that came from, that involves anything from giving people different screens to sorting out our network bandwidth. But I think now we're on to something quite interesting, which is looking at consumer trends, because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how embedded some of these new behaviors are going to be. I think generally the move towards digital has been an acceleration of things that have been happening for a long time.
Yeah.
People are moving towards digital banking, but that was happening anyway. I think what we're seeing now is that people who haven't adopted those technologies are quickly being forced into moving those technologies. But we're also interested in travel, and whether that's international travel or whether that's just domestic travel, whether that's use of cars. We don't quite know how that's going to pan out. So one of the things that we're doing from a data perspective is always looking for early indications. And we're looking at China, we're looking at other markets to see whether there are early indications that can be the first sign of a new consumer trend.
That's actually fascinating. I mean, the looking at the trends in different markets to anticipate what might likely be a range of different scenarios in your home market is very, very interesting. We haven't heard that actually before. I mean, we had some good conversation. I mean, I'm thinking about people like Michael Stutz at Blooming Brands, who was talking about how, looking at the data as allowing them to sort of understand that the people that they've got coming into the new delivery, online channels isn't actually the same people that were coming into the restaurants on a Friday night and having a meal. And it's actually, can they keep, this new, 300% growth in online activity that they have going, as well as actually tempting people back as lockdowns have opened up in certain states back into the restaurant. And obviously the mix of two, if you can get people doing online and physical, that has always been their most valuable, most profitable segment. So there are different opportunities coming out of looking at data. But the trend analysis stuff is very, very interesting. What trade secrets can you tell us?
Yeah,
what's going to happen next?
Where's the secret sauce?
I'm not going to give you trade secrets. I will say that there's no secret about prediction. I think people often think about data science as being like a crystal ball. And it's really, really not like that. We can build models that can sometimes give very accurate predictions. But more often than that, the secret is spotting something very early, so early signal detection, rather than really trying to predict things. I think that's probably as close to the secret I'm going to get.
Yeah. So let's go back a step to that, because without the data, without collecting the right data and having the good data, you can't find the signals, right? And you can't look at the trends. So let's go back to the concept we were talking about before we started recording, like this observing the right data from consumers and your channels. Can you kind of dumb down? I know you're up here. I mean, you're like, he was the guy in 2019 from a data perspective. Like, what should marketers be thinking about from a collection standpoint across their channels, consumer behavior, consumer insights, and why should they be observing? And why do you think observe is a key word there?
I think a lot of marketing historically has been gut feel, and it has also involved a lot of research. And we're talking about very small scale survey research. And I think I'm still a very big fan of qualitative research and really trying to deeply understand through conversations and through interrogation how consumers are feeling about things. But I think small-scale surveys are quite limited in what they can tell you. I think consumers find it very difficult to tell you how they're going to think about something new. Whereas I think observing is the key to understanding how consumers really react to something new. And the key difference over the last 20 years, and I've been playing around in data field for probably about 25 years. But the key difference in the last 10 to 20 years, and maybe even the last 10 years, has been the growth in the number of data sources available, primarily driven by technology, smartphones in particular, the growth in digital devices, Internet of Things to some extent. But the key for a marketer, for me, should be to look for the opportunities to collect data on what people are really doing, rather than trying to guess or rather than trying to ask people, because we all know if you ask somebody something, their views are clouded, or they find it very difficult to tell you about what they're going to do tomorrow. Intention is not a very good predictor of behavior, whereas we have so many true behavioral sources now that we should look to those first. And I think that's what I'd say to a marketer: look for the truth first, and supplement it with research where you need to. But increasingly, you don't need to. Increasingly, there's a true source of data on actual behavior that should be the gold standard.
Have you seen a change in the kind of consumer research, how much consumer research your organization and others have been doing through traditional means with focus groups, etc., as you've been able to unlock observing behavior through a range of different other data channels?
Well, I guess I would probably separate out focus group type research, so true qual research where it's facilitated and somebody's trying to direct a conversation to try to understand things that they wouldn't have guessed about, wouldn't have thought about. Because I still think the value there is trying to come up with good questions to ask later. Sometimes you don't always know the questions to ask, let alone the answers. And I think that type of traditional research has a real role there. I think where I see a more of a challenge, but I think it's still quite a big established industry, is in more survey type research, where you're trying to do at scale what actually you can maybe better do with data. So if you're trying to ask 20,000 people what they think about something or how they're going to behave, why not try to work out how they do behave in that situation? And I think that's where I see the big shift. So the sort of scale surveys rather than the very small research, which I still think is difficult to replicate because you don't always know the right questions to ask. So I see the industry, the large surveys being somewhat replaced by data. For me, I think that could probably happen faster. I think that people don't always think creatively about how to get the answers through data.
I want to ask you about that because I think what you're explaining there, I look at, or what I take is a big trend analysis, right? Like big numbers. We can look at the data, we can look at behavior, and then we can predict things. How about at the individual level, right? The Tim Glom level. Like, I today want a hot dog, not a hamburger. Like, how important is it to get my actual affinity or intent or psychographic information that probably can't be deduced from large scale, data behavior, one to mass versus the one-to-one? How do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting is the way that traditional techniques like segmentation have evolved to take advantage of these data sources. Because in the 90s, we would see big segmentation exercises happening where you'd come up with 6 target groups and they'd be based on research. But the challenge then would be you wouldn't know which individuals fell into which groups.
Exactly.
And I think largely there was a big move in the sort of late 90s around using more behavioral data to try to understand. I was involved in a company called dunnhumby that created the Tesco Club Card scheme in the UK. It worked with Kroger in the US. But it was all about using loyalty data to try to understand actual customer behavior at the individual level. And quite often we would be segmenting customers using that data, but the difference would be we'd be segmenting in a way that would mean you could identify which segment that a customer could fall into, which is much more powerful. And I think the way that has evolved has been about using more and more data from a variety of different sources, and not just loyalty card data, but increasingly online behavioral sources to be able to create smaller and smaller segments. So it might not be required to understand Tim exactly what you're doing, but to understand Tim and his lookalikes, or who are the small groups of people that we think are behaving in similar ways, and how do these people broadly like to be interacted with. And it's not just about the individual product, it could be the individual product, but I think increasingly it's things like, does Tim like to see images in a piece of communication, or does he like to see text? Does he like to see brand statements, or does he want to be told about the service or the offer or the discount? You can tailor the style of communication based on what very, very small groups of people really like in a piece of communication.
So it's actually quite interesting. We've been talking to a lot of folks in the loyalty space, and it's a big part of what Cheetah does. We have had a series of interviews with kind of loyalty experts. And whilst we are always talking about the importance of data collection within a loyalty program, it's quite interesting to hear some people say, actually the loyalty program is just about data. The fact that we're giving pit tiers and points and all the rest of it is almost ancillary for us as an organization. It's all about data.
It's just a vehicle for the data.
Yeah, so I'd say it's a couple of things. I think that is clearly where the value sits. But I think in a great loyalty scheme, there's always an open deal that you have with the consumer. The trade is that a consumer openly shares data. And in return, they get better offers, better products, better discounts. And importantly, those are discounts on the things that they actually want to buy.
Yeah, no, that we talk a lot about the value exchange with consumers in return for that data transaction, if you like. I'll tell you about myself in return for some value back to me, and obviously loyalty programs are a perfect construct.
And although I've used the term myself, but loyalty programs in a way are a slight misnomer. I think there are very few brands that command a genuine loyalty in the way that maybe football teams might command loyalty.
Right.
I think what brands can command is a great deal. You can put a great deal on the table, and if it's there and if it's right for the consumer, then the consumer will come and they'll want to buy it.
It's actually interesting. You mentioned loyalty in football, soccer. Actually, we've got a lot of Premiership teams, a lot of Real Madrids and folks around the world that have been using our platform, and actually a lot of that is based around experiences, Cheetah Experience, which allows us to run quizzes and challenges and instant wins and surveys, allowing them to build their fan database, and then our messaging platform to be able to message to that fan base around the world at scale. But actually, latterly, we've been having many conversations about loyalty, because whilst people are loyal to the club, and they don't have to fight for that, when they're thinking about monetization strategies, they want to provide a reason for fans to visit that sponsor's content, that advertising hub that, been built with Heineken for the Champions League or whatever it may be. Yeah. And so using loyalty as a way of getting people to go do what they want them to do is the way that they're looking at loyalty, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big opportunity there is that for the first time you can tap into, for a soccer team or for a football team, you can kind of tap into your fan base wherever they happen to be. It doesn't have to be a localized activity. So I think if you get the formula right, I think, you're onto a real winner. I think that fans will really want to engage, and you can engage with them wherever they happen to be in the world.
So I've got a question to spin around a tangent, which really comes back to some of the, your experience in actually creating the right environment within an organization to be able to make decisions based on data. We talked to a lot of companies, and there's a lot of variance in sophistication in terms of the importance they put on data to actually power decisions. I mean, everyone's doing it to some level, but there is great variation in the investment and the importance that some organizations put on that. So my question is really, how do you go about sort of setting up that environment to really make decisions based on data?
And you stole my question, so I'm going to put in my line what I wanted from this, because you're at Aviva, head of data science at Aviva, multinational insurance company with tens of millions of customers, and you have said you were excited to be there and turn that 320 plus year old company into a disruptor, right? To take a dinosaur, some might say in the financial services, and turn it into a disruptor. So this is the exact question I wanted as well. How does the medium-sized or the medium level marketer look at data science and create the environment to be the agent of change? Good question, Richard.
Yeah, great questions. And I think there isn't one answer to this. And I think the only thing you can do is try to attack the problem from as many different angles as possible. I don't think there's any substitute from senior level buy-in. I think if the CEO or if the exec team is not interested in using data to make a change or to make better decisions or to make better processes, I think it's very hard to win that battle. So I think, for me, I think top-level engagement is part of this, and that could involve some degree of education, helping people understand what seem like quite complex topics, but explaining them in terms that are commercially relevant. So I think the data science team or the marketing team or the technology team needs to engage with as high a level in the organization as possible. I think in the type of data scientist, that if you get onto the disruption angle, it comes down to who are the technology and data people that are in the team. And I think, for me, I look for people that are technically skilled, but equally I'm looking for people that can collaborate with people who are not data scientists. People need to be able to communicate, and they also need to be able to really talk about the business value of what it is that they're offering. You see many people that are setting up supposedly disruptive innovation or technical teams, but they're working on purely technical products or projects without thinking enough about the commercial benefit. So I think the role for the tech-savvy marketer is to bridge the gap between those two worlds, to understand the data world and the data science world. And they don't need to be a deep specialist, but they need to understand the opportunities. And they need to be able to translate that into real business benefit. And again, as you need to be able to do that at as high a level as possible.
Yep.
So how have you kind of structured or evolved the data team within Aviva? I mean, is having a chief data officer or chief data scientist really important because it's getting that C-level recognition? Do you have any tips and tricks in terms of how you would go about setting up a data scientist organization team?
I think different organizations can work in very, very different ways. And I think Aviva, we're a global company. We're in 16 markets. We have a lot of federation in our business. So we have different teams operating in different markets without that much central management, although we'll have some kind of central governance. And the key for data science is to be as close as possible to the actual business, so where the money is being made, as well as having the right level of governance centrally. So we actually have a fairly small team centrally, but we have lots of data science teams that are managed in local business units. So our team in Singapore is managed through our Singapore CEO. So although some of my responsibility sits across our whole data science community, which could involve things like making sure that we're working to best practice or making sure that we're knowledge sharing making sure that we're using the right kind of technology, or doing research into areas like algorithm transparency or sort of hot topics. We also have to have a degree of management that happens locally, because the worst thing that can happen for a data science team is for it to seem like an academic, distant endeavor. It needs to be seen as part of the business.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, management of that is major. That's not my role. So good. It's great. We have people like you and companies organizing all of us. I have a question, though, that's coming back down out of the clouds a little bit. Machine learning and AI. Can you give us practical examples and applications, on how that, how the, again, middle-level manager or middle-level marketer can think about how AI and ML can affect their consumer journey? Do you have any, examples of how that works and some of your thought process around that application?
Yes. So firstly, I often think that the term AI is not helpful, in that it's so broad. It can cover anything from automating a very, very mundane task using one line of code, all the way through to sentient machines that we think are going to have some kind of autonomy.
Thank you. And this is the head of data science agreeing. I agree. So please enlighten us. Let's find a new language to define.
That said, I think what we don't want to do is underplay what we're doing, because if other people are saying we're doing AI, we'll end up saying, well, yeah, we're doing AI. And we are. We are absolutely using machine learning on cutting edge applications to improve our customer journeys. But I think the term AI internally can confuse people, because somebody that's not a technical specialist can imagine there's some machine that's making all of the decisions, or some machine that's somehow out of control. Whereas the reality is we have a number of different machine learning models, and they broadly do the same thing. They try to say we have a whole lot of data on historical behavior at a very granular level, and how do we distill that down into a few things that we can use to make better decisions? Those might be trends, they might be predictions, they might be summaries of things that have happened before, but how do you distill 10 million data records into a few things that we think are going to be relevant to this decision? And some of those decisions we can automate. So if we want to if you're watching Netflix and you get a recommendation about the next thing that you might want to watch, that's an automated decision based on Netflix trying to match you to other people that are like you, and distilling all of that data on all of those trends and patterns into the relevant information, which is the thing that you might want to watch next. But you can do that across everything. You can, in financial services, actually, it's quite an embryonic science, because financial services are quite difficult. Trying to predict the next product that you might want in a financial services sector is difficult, and we also have to have considerations around affordability or vulnerability or other kind of governance factors. So it's a difficult challenge. But the key point with machine learning is that you're trying to take a huge amount of data, boil it down into the trends that help you make a better decision next, and then sometimes you can automate that decision. I think there are loads of examples in marketing specifically. You can think about customer journeys, and two different customer journeys might be right for different types of people. If you have data on the history of who's interacted with which decision, you might use machine learning to boil it down to these 3 characteristics that might make it relevant to put somebody into one journey rather than a second journey. Actually, in practice, you probably won't use 3. You might use a few hundred, and you might use a complex algorithm to do that. But the concept is the same. You're trying to get to the most relevant information to put the most compelling piece of content in front of your customer.
So it's a really good point, because when you think about, if you dive down into the marketing in particular, you've got segmentation, personalization, customer journey optimization. There's a raft of different technical infrastructure challenges and opportunities that companies need to address so that they can actually collect the data, then see and analyze the data, and then there's the pressures to make the data actionable, obviously maybe coming from marketing, some of those other areas. So the question is really, how do you triangulate around those different sort of, stakeholder requirements? You've got each industry, each company is different, but you've got the CIO that's, going to be responsible for some of those technical decisions, putting in data lakes and CDPs and what have you. You've got the marketing team that want to find out these insights to drive more personalized offers and, deliver better customer journeys, and they want to make data actionable. And then you've got, data scientist teams that it's all about how do we, get the data and make it accessible and build insights to it. So a number of different sort of stakeholders. How do you go about as a in Aviva or in other organizations navigating all those different stakeholder, pressures?
The tip I'd give is don't try to solve everything.
Right.
And maybe just try and solve one thing. So I think a tip that's worked for us has been picking one thing and trying to solve all of the technical challenges around getting that one thing working. So a few years ago, we said we want to follow up somebody that has been on one of our insurance pages with a relevant email that recognized the journey that they've been through on our site. And we couldn't do that at the time. But we thought we're not going to try and solve anything else. We'll just try and solve that one customer use case, because also it was something that when it was solved, we could actually put in front of customers and it could actually drive business benefit. But in doing that, it meant that we fixed a whole load of features of our technical legacy that weren't connected before. We had systems that weren't connected before. They now are, and we can now use those features to drive other pieces of benefit. But it all came from picking one use case, and this is not a technical use case, this is a business use case. It's something that our marketing director can talk about. He wants to be able to connect up these two pieces of customer experience and make them a little bit more kind of seamless. So we could use that as a rationale behind fixing a whole load of technical challenge that we wouldn't have been able to fix otherwise. So pick the one thing, really try hard to fix that, then put it live, and then other good things will come.
Good advice.
Yeah, that is good advice.
Focus.
Another question then maybe is as the use of data evolves in organizations as well. I mean, I've been in the business 20 odd years now, doing marketing technology, marketing software. And in that period of time, there's been some fundamental changes in the underlying technology to manage and process big data and things like Hadoop and other technological advances. So I guess the question is, do you think that we are, those changes happen relatively quickly, they empower new ways of looking at data, new ways of collecting data. Are the boardrooms of the US, the UK, have they caught up with the data literacy that they need because of the sheer explosion and the ability to learn from data, or are we still playing catch up? Be really interested in your thoughts on that.
Well, I think technology will always move faster than the boardroom of the US or the UK or anywhere for that matter. I think maybe it's different now. Technology is moving so fast and these different use cases are happening so fast, and startups are actually turning technology into businesses at a faster pace than ever before. I think where startups sometimes struggle is scale sometimes. There are clearly exceptions, but sometimes startups can struggle with scale. So there's still a role for big established companies to partner in that kind of ecosystem. But I think generally the board is lagging behind as a whole. There are exceptions, but I think we're seeing increased appetite. We're seeing more board level technical roles in well-established companies that I think we've seen for a very long time. And I think that's a sign that people have recognized that you need a certain degree of technical literacy at the board and at the exec team to make the most of the assets that you have in your customers, in your brand, in all the things that we've known about for a very long time. I think interestingly also, we're seeing more non-exec roles that are also coming from technical backgrounds. And again, that's a recognition that we need governance and oversight as well as day-to-day management that is much more data literate. But I think the trend is going in the right way. It will always lag behind a little bit, but I think the trend is very encouraging.
Well, as we near towards the end of our time with Orlando, I have one last question for him, and I'll give you your last question. But Orlando, this one can be short too, but I don't get a lot of time talking to people in the financial services and FinServ space. And you're there, and you're chief data officer up there at one. Do you see a trend, or is there some advice that you can give the marketing team inside of those financial services, insurance, financial banking, et cetera, to say, look, if you're going to start, if you're not data centric and you're not looking at data science, and you're not, looking at true behavior at scale, like where would you suggest that they start in context to having a good marketing outcome, whether that's personalization or a better journey? Is there something they could focus on? What kind of data they could focus on to have a better marketing experience for their customers and consumers?
I think the answer is still an evolution of the traditional answer, which is about segmenting your database in intelligent ways. I think if you get insights out of your database, these are proprietary things sometimes. Customers might have provided the data, but only you have the oversight of your whole customer base. You could understand exactly the nuances in that base that you can then mine and turn into commercial advantage. That can lead you to create relevant products, relevant experiences, relevant brand propositions, all of these kind of things. But start with trying to learn something from your data that you didn't know before.
Yeah, and it's great to hear you say that. It's so key to our mission at Cheetah Digital, with our engagement data platform, which is, effectively our CDP, to bring in all this data from very wide set of sources and then apply, segmentation, machine learning, AI, to look for opportunities to deliver those personalized offers, these personalized messages, the ability to build that relationship at an individual level. So, completely agree with you there. Amen to all of that. I just wanted to finish with one last question, which is something that we've talked about a little bit, or quite a lot actually on the show. And I'm just interested to see how it kind of impacts your role. And that's privacy. There's obviously a hell of a lot of disruption in terms of privacy and how consumers, want their data respected, how it can be collected, how it can be used, etc. Now, obviously, chief data scientist, you're going to be bringing in data from many different sources, not necessarily always sort of personal data or PII data. But maybe if you could comment on has it, and if it has, how has it impacted kind of your role?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at our exec level across the group, we're thinking about data strategy in three ways. We're thinking about data science and the great things we can do with data. We're also thinking about data engineering, which is about making sure that the data is surfaced in the right way or productionized and all those things. But equally, we're thinking about ethics and governance, and that's the conversation that we have at a very, very senior level. And I think around the use of data, when we ask consumers what they feel about that or how they feel, that the first thing that they think about is security. So they want to make sure that the data that they trust us with is being kept safe and secure. So we've put out what we call a customer data charter to make statements about data security. But the second thing we said in the customer data charter was around selling data. So customers don't like it if you do things with data without their permission. For us, that's about selling data. So we don't sell customer data. We've been public about that. But interestingly, the third part of our customer data charter, which customers have responded really well to, is us saying we do use data to create better products and better services. So we're hearing that if you say that and you're open about that, then customers are very interested in using data if you're driving value for them. So as long as you've got the security right, and as long as you're not abusing the trust that customers have in the data, we're seeing that customers are open to using data to drive value for them. But we have to do that in a very, very controlled and strict governance framework. And I think that has to be appropriate for exactly what it is that you're doing. In financial services, we're a very heavily regulated industry. We're a very heavily kind of controlled industry. We've got lots of risks. We need to understand them. We need to understand the benefits. But what we're seeing is a good sense that customers want you to make intelligent use of the data that they trusted you with.
Brilliant answer. Yeah. Orlando, I know we've come up to the end of our time, so thank you very much. Some really interesting things to come through there. Importance of the value exchange, getting a 360-degree view of the consumer, how to navigate some of those decisions around, getting data literacy throughout the organization. So some really good nuggets of information there. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, this has been great. And depending on when you're stumbling across this episode of Thinking Caps, Cheetah Digital is participating in a data table talk that Orlando will be presenting in late November of 2020. So whether that's before or after, check out cheetahdigital.com. We'll be able to get you that session. Orlando, you'll be speaking at, I'm sure, many other events as you do. Is there anything else, anything we can promote for you, or anywhere people can find or follow you?
Well, all I promote is the career of data science. I think it's become a very well-established career. It's still really exciting. The data in the world is still an untapped challenge. And so, yeah, please do get involved. Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. Thanks again. It was great to have you. And we'll see you next time on Thinking Caps.